for the introduction. I'm Doug Hale, the Airport Manager, Pine Bluff Regional Airport. Would like to welcome you all to our airport. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to your organization. I too am a small business owner, so I certainly appreciate the opportunity to speak to you. I would like to tell you a little bit about our airport. I have fielded the question many times from the clerk at Staples. I didn't know we had an airport in Pine Bluff. Yes, we have an airport, and we have a very nice airport. If you're not familiar with the airport, and unfortunately most people are not, the city has this airport city-owned. The airport serves our city in multiple ways. The primary purpose of this airport is business. The secondary purpose of the airport would be recreational. I have a piece of paper I'd like to pass around. You might recognize some of the local institutions or businesses on that sheet of paper. All of those are users of our airport. All of the major employers in Pine Bluff, Jefferson County, Southeast Arkansas use this airport for business. Excuse me. I was mentioning the aircraft on the flight line belongs to Highland Pellets, one of our newest businesses in the area. I don't recall where Highland Pellets, where they're based out of, but having that corporate aircraft out there allows them to move their executives around in a timely manner. They can go from their location to Pine Bluff, go to their site, conduct their business, get back on the aircraft, and typically be back home in time for supper. If it weren't for air travel, then they certainly could not physically do that. So that is, like I said, if you look at that list, all of those persons on that list, businesses, organizations, University of Arkansas, they all use our airport. That is the primary purpose. Business is for, like I said, our airport. Secondary purpose, as I mentioned, was the recreational use. We have a member of the a chapter of the Experimental Aircraft Association on the field, the Razorback chapter. They have a couple of fly-ins typically each year that is, of course, hosted on the airfield. Hopefully you all know about the Black Pilots of America. This will be the 21st year for their Operation Skyhook that they have on the airfield. That really is our biggest event for the year, recreational event. Like I said, this will be the 21st year. We're honored to host them each year. We look forward to seeing all of those members. They return each year. They literally come from coast to coast, border to border, to come to our airport. They enjoy some friendly competition with different flying events to demonstrate their pilot proficiencies. That group is made up of a number of people, whether it be from the young guy that has just got his pilot's license all the way to brigadier generals that flew in Vietnam, retired airline pilots. Les Morse is very instrumental in their program. He was the first African American pilot for Eastern Airlines. So there are a lot of very distinguished people in that organization. One of the big things that they do each year is they introduce children to aviation. Weather permitting, each day, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, they break off from what they're doing typically about 3 p.m. in the afternoon, and they start flying kids. They haul as many as they can. 2 years ago, last year's weather was not very conductive to flight. The year before, they hauled over 200 children over the course of just like about 2 hours each afternoon. That's quite an accomplishment. They give these children rides. I had mentioned at lunch, my father was a crop duster. I don't know how many times we would be having lunch and people would come up to him and say, "Mr. Hale, I know you don't remember me, but you gave me my first airplane ride." That's something that people, especially children, they don't forget. So that's one thing that that the BPA does that I'm extremely supportive. I'm supportive of them anyway, but I'm very proud to be able to support them in that aspect. Like I said, the weather has to be pretty decent because, you know, if you shake a soda can real good, that thing will spew, and so will small children. So like I said, primary purpose, business, secondary is recreational for our airport. This is a public airport. I'll give you a little bit of history about the airport. The airfield was named after John McGavitt Grider. He was a World War I fighter pilot that unfortunately lost his life over the skies of France in June of 1918. A lot of fields were named after famous aviators, in his case posthumously. A lot of, if you ever read about World War I, the aviation was introduced in warfare in World War I, and the aircraft that they flew were very crude, and most pilots, you were lucky if you survived flight training, much less combat. So he was one of many that lost his life in the Great War. The Pine Bluff School of Aviation was constructed in 1941 as a primary training base during World War II. Over 10,000 pilots were trained here as part of the war effort. Some investors actually purchased 850 acres from the local Phillips family. That's what the airport property consisted of. At that time, it was a primary training base, so there was not a runway constructed. It was all sod field. They vectored into the wind, and that's the way that they took off for the day. There were a number, as part of the Pine Bluff School of Aviation, there were a number of satellite fields because you couldn't conduct all the flying activity on this airfield. Therefore, they spread them out into different places. They actually went out to Pine Bluff's first airfield was Tony Field. That's where PJ's sits at now, PJ's nightclub. That was Tony Field. There was also one where some of you will remember the Zebra Drive-In that was on Blake out there. That was an airfield a long time ago. There were numerous airfields around, but Pine Bluff, along with, just to name a few, Stuttgart, West Helena, Walnut Ridge, El Dorado, all of those were airfields that were generated as part of the World War II flight training effort. The Fairchild PT-19 was the aircraft that was used for training on the field. We actually have a Fairchild PT-19 that's in the EAA's hangar down the way. The cadets, they received primary training if they didn't wash out. It was failed, as it was called. They progressed to basic training and then to advanced training, and then from advanced training they went into either fighters, bombers, or transport category flight. The airfield was deeded over to the city of Pine Bluff after the war as part of the War Surplus Act. In 1947, the runway was actually constructed, a 3,500-foot runway. Trans-Texas Airline, TTA, they operated commercial service on the field until the late 80s. The city of Pine Bluff established the Pine Bluff Aviation Commission in 1957. That is a commission that has the full complete authority to oversee and govern the airport, personnel, and properties. It's great to work at this airport. I grew up on the airport. I'll give you a little history of myself here shortly, but you never know who's going to show up, who's going to fall out of the sky, as we say out here. Elvis Presley, Bill Clinton, Mrs. Michelle Obama, Jerry Jones, Ashley Judd, Reese Witherspoon. Anybody ever heard of any of those people? You never know who's going to show up. We receive transient air traffic coming in from all over the U.S. and actually all over the world coming into our airfield. We also welcome traffic from our Armed Services branch when George W. was president. We were actually in line between Washington and Crawford, Texas, and we received Marine One, the helicopter, in here numerous times, which we're all patriotic people, the staff is, and we were very pleased to receive his aircraft. Unfortunately, he was not on board, but we were still glad to see his helicopter. It was a fuel sale, we'll take it. Oftentimes visitors will stay overnight in our city, and other than the airport staff, very little people know about that. If it's at the end of the day, they've been flying for a while, perhaps it's a planned or unplanned stop, then they spend the night in our city. Whenever they arrive, we have a courtesy vehicle. We have 2 courtesy vehicles, and we allow them to take that vehicle into town to go to the hotel, spend a night. So they go to the hotel, they go to a restaurant, perhaps a retail store. Those are taxes that are generated for our city that most people never know about. They come back out, they purchase fuel from us, that's revenue for us. They get back in the aircraft and they proceed to their destination. So the airport does generate taxes for the city, and we're glad to do so. If there's any questions along the way, I'll be glad to field any questions. The staff and the commission, the staff consists of the manager, myself, a bookkeeper, 3 flight linemen. I've worked for the commission for almost 12 years. I was mentioning to Nancy at lunch that I grew up on the field. I actually grew up right across the tree line right over there. It's funny how life makes a full circle. The airport manager back when run me off the airport property on my dirt bike as a kid, and I've had to do the same thing. I was a lot more nice about it than Bob Johnson was, I'll tell you that. The commission, we have 7 commissioners. They serve a 5-year term. They are recommended by the mayor. They are approved by the city council. We have a great group of commissioners that are very dedicated. Tommy is actually our newest commissioner. Ken Johnson, most of you guys know him. He is the current chairperson. Kenneth Collins, Rocky Thornburg, Harvey Sizemore, Kedra Burrell, Dr. Michelle Paskovic, and as mentioned, Tommy Palmer. Like I said, they're a great group of people that have business sense and are very interested in our airport and our city, and I'm very pleased to have all of them as our commissioners. Some people have 1 boss, I have 7. The airport has hangar rentals, individual aircraft storage rental, space rental for aircraft storage, fuel sales, pilot supplies, as well as 500 acres of farmland. The farmland generates revenue for us each year, as well as all the items that I've just mentioned. Now, the businesses that we have currently on the airfield, Pafford Air One is the newest business. That's a air ambulance service that we're very pleased to have on the airfield. Tomlinson Avionics has been on the field for probably close to 40 years. Dixie Aero Services, they do aircraft maintenance. Terry's been on the field for 30 plus years. Kendrick Aircraft Maintenance, and Mike's Flight Service. For many years, Jane Berry had Berry's flying service. She offered flight training, charter aircraft. Unfortunately, Miss Berry passed away a number of years ago, but a number of people, myself included, got their private pilot's license with Miss Berry. Since that time, flight training is it's a tough business, small business to be in. You're lucky if you break even in that, actually. But we have a guy, Mike Lane, retired from the railroad, and he's been an active flight instructor for some time during his tenure with UP. And when he retired, it's something he wanted to do in his retirement, so he approached the commission, and so we now have flight training on the field again. The commission supports him in his business. It's give and take in business. As you all know, we support him and quite frankly give him a break because it's a business that's very tough to be in. but he also has brought us numerous customers, base customers, fuel sales, things of that nature. So it's good business for both of us.
Let's talk about the farming part. We don't do the farming, we lease it out.
That's correct.
The revenue from the farming operation helps to subsidize.
It does.
Keeps
Yes. It is currently generating $38,000 a year. That contract is up this year. I'll put it out in September to give the next person, whoever the highest bidder for the property is, it's a cash rent. We'll see who that is in September. I do that in September. That gives whoever the incoming farmer the chance to put a fall crop on the property. But it's 500 acres. It's mostly irrigated. The commission has made investments in the property. In today's time in farming, if the ground is not irrigated, then quite frankly it's hard to rent, and you're going to get substantially less rent for it if it's not irrigated. So the commission, like I said, has made investments in irrigation on the property. Some of the airport projects that we've had over the course of the last several years, runway project, runway 1836, and let me mention this, all runways are numbered, as you probably know. Runway 1836, as we have out here, those are compass headings. So as a pilot, if you're landing on runway 36, if you look up, if your compass isn't on 360 degrees, you're in the wrong place. So that project, we had a seal coat application and new markings applied. That project cost was $353,000, which is a pretty good cost, but when you consider a slab of asphalt that's 150 foot wide by 5,998 feet long, then that's a lot of square footage. That project was funded by a 95.5% airport improvement grant from the Federal Aviation Administration. Upon completion of that grant and other grants that I'll mention, the Arkansas Department of Aeronautics pays the 5% city match. The FAA grant through their FAA AIP match grant, the end result is basically the project is funded 100% by federal and state governments, and there is no cost to the city of Pine Bluff.
I just like to say Doug has done a marvelous job, y'all. He's having to go after those grants pretty much on his own to be able to get them, and he's got a great relationship with the state and the federal guys, and has pulled off some monumental things out here.
Thank you for recognizing that.
No, I know. I mean, I've watched it. I know what you're doing.
Thank you. The runway project, we did the same thing with the taxiway project. It runs parallel to the runway. That was $396,570. The apron projects, we had two of those. The apron, which is the parking area out here, consists of concrete surfaces, asphalt surfaces. So that's how we divided the project up. We had to go at it in two phases. The asphalt and terminal, like I said, they were done in two separate phases to be able to afford the projects. That was $326,000 for the apron. The terminal building is something that we are very proud of. The terminal building was built in 1960 as an air passenger terminal. The hallway was incorporated into the building during the renovation. The wall, when you come into the hallway, that was one building, that was the terminal, and where you're sitting at, this was a flight service station. Flight service stations, as an aviator, you have to check the weather where you're going, your destination. That's how the flight service stations served the purpose at that time. Since that time, that, along with many other things in our society, have become automated. So all of that is done over the telephone, things of that nature. But this literally was the flight service station. This is the room that you walked into, we're sitting at. My uncle retired from the flight service. I remember him sitting exactly where I'm at, giving weather briefings to pilots whenever they'd come in. Something I'd like to mention, when Ned Permy mentions at 6 o'clock that it's 48 degrees in Pine Bluff, Well, the fuel truck's in the way. On the other side of that, we walk out to the aircraft, there's an orange and white building out there. To the right or the south of that building, you'll see some white equipment. That's all automated equipment that belongs to the National Weather Service. That collects all the weather data. So when you call our ASOS, the FAA is an acronym, it's full of acronyms. The ASOS is the Automated Surface Observing System. As a pilot, you call into that, you get the current weather conditions to Pine Bluff. That is generated from that weather equipment over there. The weather equipment comes via phone line into our telco room. From there, again phone line to the National Weather Service that's located at the North Little Rock Airport. So that is where the news media is, well, that's where that information generates from. So that's where all the news agencies, all of the weather apps that we have on our phone, it all comes from that equipment. That's another way that your airport serves your community. The airport and the arsenal in the 40s were, that's when I understand historically speaking, the city of Pine Bluff, was a sizable town, but that generated a large influx of people coming into Pine Bluff to support both of those government agencies. But like I said, a lot of people they received their initial flight training in Pine Bluff and therefore had ties to Pine Bluff, either remained in Pine Bluff or came back to Pine Bluff because of their experience during their flight training here.
As far as the renovations of the building, how was all that funded?
All of that was funded through the Arkansas Department of Aeronautics.
We didn't have to put any money in that?
Yes, that was a 80-20 grant.
Matching grant.
That was a matching grant from the Arkansas Department of Aeronautics, ADA. The city funded 20% of that project, and the state aeronautic agency or commission, they funded the other 80% of the project. It was completed in 2 phases. Like I said, we're very proud of the building. It was originally in two different buildings that were incorporated into one. The building had not had anything done to it since it was built in 1960. It was extremely dated. It was built as the air passenger terminal. The mission of the airport has since changed from commercial service airport to a general aviation airport, and we needed a terminal. The terminal was the centerpiece of the airport, and we needed a terminal that reflected the new mission of the airport as a general aviation airport. And we receive compliments all the time as a result of the renovation of the building. And if I say so myself, it is a nice building. The restaurant we expanded. The lobby was originally about as big as this table. It's certainly much larger now. We have new office area for us, a very nice conference room. Outside the door is the pilot's lounge. They make themselves comfortable. There's a flight planning room, and there's also a quiet room. The corporate guys, you will meet them out there. The typical life of a corporate guy, they get up very early in the morning, get the aircraft out, prepare the aircraft, get the boss on board, deliver him. That's a mad rush for them to sit around and twiddle their thumbs all day until the boss comes back, load him up, and reverse that whole process. We also have something that is important, a shower in there. We did incorporate a shower into the restroom. Those corporate guys, they're here. They take a jog around as they did just a little bit ago on the property. They can shower, freshen up, get ready for the flight, wait for the boss, but it's also good for the staff. I have had a Jet A bath as well as the other staff. It's nice to be able to go in there and clean up. We have 2 different fuels that we sell out here. There are 2 different aviation fuels, let me put it that way. Aviation gasoline, known as avgas, which is 100 octane low leaded gasoline, and there is Jet A. Most people have heard of Jet A fuel. That's what the commercial airliners take. Jet A fuel is simply kerosene. That's all it is. Fuel sales are a big part of our income, and the jet sales always top the avgas sales. Avgas sales are individuals like us just putting gas in their airplane like you would your car. These guys out here, they always take a drink whenever they come in here, and that's where our revenue is generated on the fuel sales. We keep competitive pricing on our fuel. We do fuel surveys to make sure that we are in the market. So we try to stay competitive on our fuel to draw people in, but also to be fair to our customers. We strive to be very customer friendly, to provide very good customer service. I've told members of the mayor and the city council, we are the ambassadors to the city of Pine Bluff. As I mentioned, we have people coming from all over the U.S., all over the world. You never get a second chance at a first impression. So we are the first impression they have of Pine Bluff during their initial visit. We take that very seriously. We greet them, and like I said, try to provide very good customer service to them, and try to give them directions to where they're going. I've hauled many people to the hotel and back. It's just a number of things. We're also tasked, the staff, with the facility. There's 10 hangars, numerous buildings. There are hundreds of lights out there. The airport property is 850 acres, so there's 350 acres over here that we get to mow.
Wow.
We're tasked with all of that. Like I said, there's 3 flight linemen. Right now there's 2. I'm looking to hire one, besides myself and the bookkeeper. So we all wear multiple hats around here, and we do the best that we can.
What's your budget operating? Where does it come from?
It's about $500,000 we generate. The city is about $100,000. The airport was self-supportive for many, many years. Unfortunately, with the economy of Pine Bluff declining, the airport, unfortunately, it reflects is with us as well. We're always striving to be self-supportive, and look for ways to cut expenses, things of that nature. But a big part of any business, I'm preaching to the choir, is your labor. Labor is something that is very expensive for any business. It's certainly expensive for us, but I can easily justify that. As I just mentioned, all the tasks that we have here, we do a lot with the staff that we have. The airport staff was much larger once upon a time. Yes, we generate revenue through fuel sales as well as rental, space rental and hangars, farmland.
I have a question.
Yes.
What does the airport need to do in order to house Delta and American Airlines? So people could fly not to Little Rock but here.
Commercial service airports, number one, there would be a very large investment for the city of Pine Bluff. The airport would have to make a number of upgrades to the airport in order to be in compliance with a Part 139 commercial air service airport. That would be, first of all, the city would have to invest a lot of money in bringing the airport up in compliance.
Can you get a grant?
No.
No.
Actually, the AIP grants that I mentioned, they don't cover that. All of the commercial service airports, other than Little Rock and XNA in the northern part of the state, they have enough flights, therefore revenue coming in, that they can support themselves. There are other commercial service airports, Hot Springs, Jonesboro, Harrison, El Dorado. It's because of their proximity or not near proximity to other major commercial service airports. It is literally 50 miles from Grider Field to Adams Field in Little Rock. Our proximity to Adams Field is not far enough out of the perimeter of that field that the government, all of those are subsidized by the government. They literally cannot make it on their own without government subsidy. There's not enough revenue versus expenses. So therefore the government dictates who will have commercial service and who will not. There's a number of stipulations, but the first and foremost, if you are within so many miles of a major commercial service airport, as we are to Little Rock, they won't even entertain the thought of it.
I've always been impressed with you and of course the commission does an excellent job of overseeing it all.
Yes, they do.